Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. Well, want to check on things going on in the geopolitical arena, and this is something that's really a hot topic out there, what's moving. So before we get into what's happening with Venezuela, let's just take a peek at the USNI News Fleet and Marine Tracker, and this is from February 19th. And what we could see is, if we compare it to a week before, we do see that there's increased activity that could theoretically be in range of Venezuela, and we have to, of course, wonder, how accurate this is as well. It is very different when we look at this compared to in the past, and there is a lot of talk right now going on right now that something may be imminent as far as Venezuela goes. And as always, I'll have all the links for you guys. I wanted to show you another interesting tool, and this is global.adsbexchange.com. and so this is a virtual radar, and you could keep track of planes that are in the air and just simply click on them, and it'll give you info on what that plane is. And what I found really interesting was watching things go over the house here, basically, because there's not much that goes over our area right here. But I was able to see some military planes that happened to be in the area when I was seeing chemtrails being sprayed. So I found that very interesting. And so this will give you info on pretty much anything that's in the air right now. As we can see, this is Air France. Over here, this one is out of the Dominican Republic. And of course, we're looking at Venezuela right here as well. And doing that for a reason, because as we said, it feels and that something may occur shortly, and we're hearing from multiple sources that things are potentially imminent. And so it's interesting, and this is just one of those fun little tools for you guys that have a little bit of time to just keep track of what is in the air. And again, I'll have the links for you guys. So, there's a lot going on, and over here, this is a Twitter, Elent News. There's a report: local civilians and indigenous people have detained at least 27 Venezuelan soldiers near the Brazilian border after soldiers opened fire on locals, causing deaths and injuries. And, I think it was probably a good 2 months or even more ago, that Florida Maquis was talking about the fact that you're going to see, military action in Venezuela, and you're going to see Brazil be part of that. And so we could see things starting to happen now. Venezuelan military kills woman in standoff over aid. Aid was entering the country from Brazil. As we see people at a protest during a rally against the government of Maduro. So Venezuelan soldiers killed at least one person and injured a dozen others Friday near the Brazilian border. And instead of mediating, the military started shooting. Emilio Gonzalez, mayor of the municipality of Grand Sabana, told CNN. He also said the victim was a 34-year-old woman who was part of an indigenous group that clashed with the Venezuelan military, one day after President Nicolas Maduro shuttered the country's border with Brazil. And I have basically reports coming from different sides, so to speak, because it's good to look at the lingo from different places. And so this is out of RT, talking about the same thing. And there is video footage here that purports to show several of the wounded being treated in the hospital. Between 12 and 23 people are believed to be injured. And so a group of opposition deputies called the shooting a brutal military crackdown on indigenous communities who were trying to open the border to allow aid convoys from Brazil to pass. Images shared on social media show the indigenous community blocking military vehicles from accessing the area. And as we said, Maduro has closed the border with Brazil because he is expecting that to be a place where military action and a invasion actually is going to end up taking place. 2 dead, 14 injured, and this is out of Zero Hedge, so there actually were 2 deaths. As we see, a second person has died. And again, they have that same video going on. And this is just hours after Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said a U.S. humanitarian aid convoy for Venezuela could provoke clashes and create a pretext for removing President Nicolas Maduro, a staunch Russian ally, from power by force. The Washington Post reports, according to eyewitnesses and community leaders, that Venezuelan soldiers opened fire on a group of civilians, attempting to keep open a segment of the southern border with Brazil for deliveries of humanitarian aid, leading to multiple injuries and the first fatality. And President Nicolas Maduro had warned that the aid is a pretext for U.S. intervention and had locked down his nation. And so the Washington Post details the deadly events starting at 6:30 a.m. on Friday. A military convoy approached a checkpoint set up by indigenous community in the southern village of Cumaracapai that rests on the main artery linking Venezuela to Brazil. When the volunteers sought to block the military vehicles by standing in front of them, soldiers began firing assault rifles, wounding at least 12, 4 of them seriously. And one woman, Zoraida Rodriguez, who was 42, was killed. And so, is this the fire that lights the spark that creates the war? Brazil moves Venezuelan aid to border despite closures. As we see a woman holding a sign up there. And it's fascinating to watch it all unravel, and at the same time it's horrifying when you realize what's probably coming. Venezuelan crisis, Maduro closes border with Brazil, as we had talked about. Out of Sputnik, U.S. transferring special troops and weapons close to Venezuela. And so the United States provocations in Venezuela, if implemented, would dramatically increase the level of tension and confrontation in the world, the Russian Foreign Ministry has said in a statement. Development of events in Venezuela has come to a critical point. Everyone understands this. On 23rd of February, a dangerous large-scale provocation is set to take place, instigated by the Washington-led crossing of the Venezuelan border with so-called humanitarian convoy, which may lead to clashes between supporters and opponents, forming a convenient pretext for military action to remove the current legitimate president from the government. And that was the statement of Maria Zakharova, who was the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman. The U.S. is planning to transfer weapons and special troops close to Venezuela, according to the spokeswoman, and we have evidence that U.S. companies and their NATO allies are working on the issue of acquiring a large batch of weapons and ammunition in an Eastern European country for their subsequent transfer to Venezuelan opposition forces, she also said. And the statement comes amid the escalation of tensions in the Latin American country in light of the situation with humanitarian aid going on. And so over here, net blocks confirmed YouTube, Bing, and Google services are blocked in Venezuela during the Venezuelan Live Aid concert. And again, dropping the service, we have a Chilean Air Force C-130 with humanitarian aid that landed in Cucuta. And by the way, there was a lot of C-130 activity going on around Los Angeles and other areas as well. There's definitely a lot of activity going on. Russian cargo Boeing 757 VP BHM seems to be heading towards Venezuela again. So bringing in humanitarian aid, or as these tweets go ahead, more missiles. What else is coming in? And we talked about the locals clashing. Cuba accuses U.S. of preparing for military action in Venezuela. So at a Havana press conference Tuesday, the Cuban government accused the Trump administration of preparing a military operation against Venezuela, suggesting that humanitarian aid is just a pretext for intervention. And this comes out of Zero Hedge. As you see, military bases of the U.S. and NATO in Latin America and the Caribbean, of which there are many, I should say. Many. And so what is in place already? There could be a substantial amount already in place. And so, this could start at any moment. And as I said before, the spark might have already lit the fuse. So this is out of RT, and this includes a video that you can look at saying, where are all the empty shelves? And so Max Blumenthal tours Caracas supermarket. And you know what? Everything looks perfectly faced. I gotta tell you, looking at the pictures, it looks like this is a little bit of a show going on. Because would things be so perfectly faced? Well, maybe if it just opened up, and he's the first person in. But basically, the person doing this walkthrough, Max Blumenthal, came to the conclusion that there isn't an issue here at food distribution or food scarcity. The issue is the buying power of the Venezuelans that has been completely destroyed because their currency has been so badly weakened by hyperinflation, speculation, and the flood of dollars that the government can't control here, as well as hoarding by private capitalistic elements that support the opposition. And that could be done. Hoarding could happen, most definitely. So the amusing bit of on-the-ground reporting comes amid a tense standoff over U.S. attempts to deliver what Washington has described as humanitarian aid into Venezuela in defiance of the wishes of the government. Juan Guaido, the U.S.-backed, self-declared interim president of Venezuela, said on Thursday that he will personally go to the border with Colombia to get the shipment from the U.S., urging drivers to go with him and defied the border guards ordered to prevent the delivery. So, this is definitely getting tenser. So, President Trump says he'll maintain some troops in Syria. The media says 400 peacekeepers to stay. And so we shall see how that develops as well. Weaponized water. India and Pakistan is a serious situation that could become a very hot war. And they've been tense ever since they were created. Pakistan was created. Basically, this is partially a philosophical, religious thing for sure, and there's just a lot of distrust that is there as well. So India is threatening to divert 3 rivers away from Pakistan. India has reiterated claims it's building dams to shut off its share of water supply to Pakistan-controlled Kashmir in response to February 14th suicide bomb attack on Pulwama, which killed 40 paramilitary soldiers. The bombing in the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir was claimed by an insurgency group called Jaish-e-Mohammed, which operates out of Pakistan. It was the deadliest attack on Indian soldiers since the Kashmiri insurgency began in 1989. India has accused its neighbor of not doing enough to rein in the extremist insurgents operating within its border, while Pakistan denies any involvement. A war of words has ensued in the aftermath, and now Indian Water Resources Minister Niki Gadkari said his country will harness the water supply from the rivers that flow through Kashmir for use in Indian states. And in a fiery response, Pakistan's Federal Minister for Water Resources, Faisal Valda, pulled no punches with threatening a series of tweets that touted the strength of Pakistan's army. And you can see one of the tweets right here. It's high time you realize the consequences of a war. Pakistan Army is not a dummy force. It's bold, brave, and well-trained, capable to destroy Modi's generations. But we don't want that, so learn that your warmongering won't do you any good, dear India. And this could definitely, head off in the wrong direction very fast. And both of these countries are nuclear powers. That's the thing to keep in mind. So Iran's Navy begins a massive drill stretching across the world's key oil choke points. And it's a 3-day war game exercise on Friday in the Persian Gulf in an expansive area encompassing the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman, and even stretching to the northern parts of the Indian Ocean, state media reports. Some reports indicate the games could go on for as much as a week, but all emphasize the large-scale nature of the drills, in which Iran's Navy will showcase the Fatah-class submarine, a domestically built sub carrying cruise missiles and torpedoes, as well as the Sahand destroyer. And we see some photos right there. And obviously tensions are high. And of course, this would be one of the principal points that would be closed off during any sort of global war. And whoever could control that would definitely strengthen their position. And this is out of DEPCA. And this is stating that Iran is saying we have taken control of 7 or 8 U.S. drones over Syria and extracted intelligence. So do they really have the ability to do that? That's the question. Well, they're saying they not only have the ability, but they also did. So if that's the case, that would definitely be very disconcerting for the U.S. And we have Russian military scrambled. They scrambled Su-27 jet to intercept a Swedish spy plane near the border. And this is out of Sputnik, so obviously it's going to have the Soviet, well, I was going to say Soviet, they don't exist anymore, the Russian side view of this. A Russian Su-27 fighter jet was scrambled on February 19th to identify and intercept an air target approaching the Russian airspace over the Baltic Sea. The Swedish Ministry of Defense earlier claimed that a Russian Su-27 fighter allegedly approached to a dangerous distance of about 20 meters, some 65 feet, from the Swedish electronic reconnaissance aircraft over the Baltic Sea. According to the statement, the Russian fighter jet approached the target at a safe distance for visual identification, classified it as a Gulfstream reconnaissance plane of the Swedish Air Force. The Russian fighter returned safely to its home base after the foreign aircraft flew away from the Russian border. Earlier this month, Russian military reported it had spotted 24 foreign reconnaissance aircraft near the border in a week and had to scramble jets 4 times to intercept the foreign planes. Interesting. There's definitely a little, well, I don't even think we could say a little bit of a Cold War thing going. It's definitely getting very frigid. At least the appearances are, that's the case. And so this is out of usni.org, and it's a report to Congress on U.S.-Turkey relations, of which, there are some issues, and we've talked about that. The fact that Turkey is a NATO country. They've been NATO allies since '52, and they have some vital interests, but it's really obvious they are in the Russian, Chinese, Iranian sphere of influence. And so this is just, it's interesting to look at this report. And here is the PDF right here that's going to basically the official powers that be. It's out of the Congressional Research Service. So it's interesting to look at the report and really go through it for those of you that are interested in this type of thing, to actually see something that's going into to Congress, because it's apparent that Turkey, as we have said before, they have their own objectives going on, but are obviously, while they're a part of NATO, they're really not a part of NATO. And so it's going to be interesting to see as this develops as well. So we live in very, very interesting times, very, very tense times at the moment. And there are numerous sources going on right now. Everybody from Florida Marquis, of course, who's been ahead of this as far as everything with Venezuela, to many other sources out there saying that it is pretty much imminent. Something could happen any moment as far as the new war, which is going to be the war over Venezuela, and seeing what it develops into. Will this be something in which one side acquiesces rather quickly, or will this be something that is long and drawn out? And if it is longer and more drawn out, what does it develop into? Is this basically the spark that lights the fire that develops into a more global war, a hot global war? It might not take too long before we get the answer to that. So my friends, as always, please do thumbs up to support the channel. Go ahead and subscribe, click the bell, get all notifications, share with as many as possible. Let's keep waking people up. Let's share our comments, our thoughts, and keep sharing what you're seeing around the country and the world, you know, as far as unusual military activity, things of those light. Let's keep each other informed, even if we're not going to get information from official sources that's always entirely accurate or completely unbiased. So my friends, as always, stay safe out there. God bless, and namaste.